Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachani Navisesa Sanyavadi Paschatya Dastarine. We're continuing our discussion on the roles of men and women, and specifically now in this class, we're going to go back to our focus on the roles of women, which, as I've said before, it's important for men to understand the roles of women, because sometimes men expect women to play certain roles that are not practical or not possible, or that were roles that women could play at a different time and may not always be appropriate for today. So I think it's important not only that women understand what their roles are and how to adapt to a changing society and still remain Krishna conscious, but also how men will relate to them and how they will relate to men in their new roles. It's a challenge, because the world is much different than it was, and the roles of the sexes have changed, and men occasionally have female roles, many women have male roles. And whether that's good or not, that will depend on the person and the circumstance. But ultimately, in the ultimate analysis, the way Prabhupada would look at something is, well, how is this advancing our own Krishna consciousness, or how is this advancing the Krishna consciousness of others? So he wouldn't always evaluate it in and of itself as being right or wrong, but seeing how its relationship to Krishna consciousness, even if it's, let's say, there's a Krishna conscious principle, and then you would think, well, by following that principle, we'll all be more Krishna conscious. Well, generally, yes, but not always. Situations vary, and sometimes we may do something which is not traditionally considered Krishna conscious, but it would be advantageous for either the individual or for the preaching. And ultimately, that's how Prabhupada would evaluate something's worth. Of course, we can't compromise Krishna conscious principles, but in consideration of doing something which may be a social, so to speak, a social compromise, but not a compromise of Krishna consciousness, then Prabhupada may make that compromise if it's beneficial, if it helps us get closer to Krishna. So, that's a general, let's say, summation or understanding of what we've been discussing. And, as in everything requires balance. So if we're talking about women taking on new roles and giving up old roles, then we have to know how much they can give up, how much they can take on without compromising their own Krishna consciousness. So that requires some balance, some intelligence. And so we can't think, well, just because society is different, then for us as devotees, well, we can just do everything differently. We have to see, okay, it's different, so how can I best fit in this new situation? And at the same time, without compromising spiritual principles and without compromising my Krishna consciousness. So let's continue reading, and then I'm sure this topic will come up more and more. No material qualifications can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet He is satisfied, and our endeavors become successful simply by our developing devotional service to Him. So in other words, let's say there's a Vedic principle and I follow it very strictly, but it's not directly bhakti or directly service or directly pleasing Krishna as much as bhakti would please Krishna. So that then becomes a lower principle. It subordinates itself to the principle of what's pleasing to Krishna. So you don't always want to evaluate something on the basis of, okay, yeah, it's shastric, we should follow it. But sometimes something may be shastric, but there's another principle that may be more pleasing to Krishna. So we may have to give up one principle and adopt another principle. So that's the idea here. The idea here. Krishna is satisfied by our endeavors, and our endeavors become successful by our developing devotional service. Thus, from Krishna's viewpoint, unless and until we're elevated to spiritual consciousness, we're conditioned and fallen. From that viewpoint, those of us who are spiritually inclined are more intelligent than those who aren't. And on the spiritual platform, everyone is equal. Krishna does not discriminate. So, we made this point before, but I think it warrants discussing again. We can make a broad generalization. These people are more intelligent, these people are less intelligent, and we can classify by race or by gender. And of course, as you know, there's that statement by Chanakya Pandit, Manu Samhita, women are less intelligent. And so what Vishaka is saying, that in the broader scheme of things, you understand that those who are Krishna conscious, they're intelligent, and those who are not Krishna conscious are not intelligent, or they're less intelligent. And that Krishna doesn't value you or view you based on your material qualification, but based on your bhakti. And then also, I think another important point is, intelligence is not really a qualification for pleasing Krishna. Just like Kunti said, we women, we're not so philosophical, so we can't speculate like great philosophers. But Prabhupada's point was they don't have to. They're naturally, women are a little more simple, so they're naturally more inclined to spirituality. And sometimes men speculate themselves right out of Krishna consciousness, or speculate themselves right out of believing in God. So, then if a woman is not a great philosopher, but she surrenders to Krishna, then she's more intelligent than the intelligent philosopher who doesn't surrender, right? So, everything is not black and white. And especially if you say women are less intelligent, but you don't even understand the definition of intelligence or what is meant by intelligence, then your statement doesn't have much meaning to you or to those you speak to unless you can explain it. Okay, you're less intelligent. Does that mean you can't be Krishna conscious? No. Like I said the other day, another class, Prabhupada was speaking to a reporter, a female reporter, and she said, do all the women have to get married? And he said, yes, they should. They need to be protected. And she said, but what if they don't want to get married? And he said, then you have sex with a man, he gets you pregnant, and he goes away. And either you have an abortion or you have to go on welfare. And so he was explaining that if you don't understand that sexual freedom is just a way in which men can exploit you and then go away, they can just enjoy you without having to marry you. If you don't understand that, that's less intelligent. And from that you need protection. You need another man who sees this to be able to explain this to you. So in that sense, when we say protection, it's come to the point in Kali Yuga that you have to be protected from men who would exploit you. And sometimes, as we said before, you think they love you, but they don't. They just want to take advantage of you. In the current age, so often when a man says, I love you, what he's really saying is, I love having sex with you. Of course, he's not going to admit that, and she probably is not going to admit that till it becomes more evident. But then you might say, but it seems men are also less intelligent if all they want is to have sex with a woman, and it's true. So in Kali Yuga, as we've discussed, things are so mixed up that when you say this class is more intelligent or less intelligent, it's not so cut and dry anymore. There's plenty of foolish men and there's plenty of foolish women. But specifically, when we talk about protection of women, what we're seeing now in Kali Yuga is they have to be protected from the people who are supposed to protect them, the men. Men are supposed to be protectors, and they're not doing a good job of that. They're doing a good job of exploiting women, so now you need protection from the men who should protect you, but who are exploiting you. And if they exploit you in the name of love, and you believe that, then that's less intelligent, and that you need definitely to be protected from that. It's not that you always don't know that, but sometimes some women don't realize that. Of course, you could say, but men fall in love with women and do foolish things. It's true. So that's why when we speak about women being less intelligent, it's really you want to refine it specifically to what Prabhupada meant, or what the Shastra means. That it means they tend to be more materially inclined, materially attached. But Prabhupada indicated when a woman becomes a devotee, she transcends that, at least to some degree. And then she becomes, in a sense, more intelligent than men because she renounces sense gratification. So anyone who is attached to sense gratification, according to Krsna, is foolish. And if a woman becomes a devotee and renounces that, understanding the futility of material life and material sense gratification, she's the most intelligent. But still, there's that inclination for material attachment. And sometimes she doesn't understand that a man who says he loves her is actually lusting after her, and she falls for it. That's a symptom of being less intelligent. But we can turn it around, and a woman could tell a man, I love you, and she doesn't, and he falls for it. So then in that moment, he's less intelligent. So it seems, rather than isolate women as being less intelligent and men being intelligent, it's better just to understand what is intelligence, and then we can decide on a case-by-case basis who's acting intelligently and who's not. And you can decide for yourself. Are you intelligent or are you not intelligent? Well, if you fall for Maya, you're not intelligent. If you fall for sense gratification, it takes you away from Krishna, you're not intelligent. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. So men should never think, oh, I'm a man, I'm more intelligent. Maybe not. But it depends how you're defining intelligence, and if you're defining intelligence in terms of devotion and renunciation, then women who become devotees obviously are more intelligent than men who don't. So, also, one of the things we have to understand when we're looking at these definitions is that in the time of Manu, when Manu spoke these things, men were actually men, and women were actually women. So there was a distinction. The men were very strong, and they could protect their women from other men who were also strong, but demoniac, who would exploit the women. So these men could actually protect. Nowadays, not all men can protect women, and a lot of women can protect themselves better than their men can protect them because their men are lazy or irresponsible. So a lot of what we hear, which doesn't seem to make sense, makes total sense within the context it was spoken. Right? Now, if I give you an example, this is a contextual statement, and one of my god-sisters was telling me this yesterday. She said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada said in a purport that women like to be raped. And so, of course, when you hear that, you say, well, women don't like to be raped because rape means, you're not consenting. So this god-sister said, yeah, that's true, women don't like to be raped, but if a guy gets out of a Ferrari, has millions of dollars, is extremely handsome, yeah, they don't mind getting raped by him. Actually, they want to. So, it's contextual. Yeah, generally, who wants to be raped, man or woman, don't want to be raped. But there may be exceptions, and women are kind of allowing themselves to get raped by their boyfriends all the time. So you have to understand context when Prabhupada's speaking, and you have to understand social context. So obviously the context was different, and if you don't understand the context of the statement, sometimes it's hard to explain it. So when you talk about men are like this and women are like that, well, when that was spoken, they were like that. Men were actually strong. And now you see so many men who are weak, and the women are stronger than the men. They're pushing their men. Go out, get a job, be responsible. Oh, I don't feel like it. And the woman's working 2 jobs and taking care of the kids, and he's just sitting around watching television. That's not a man. By all definitions, that's less intelligent. So I think it's important that you understand generalities, but you also understand specifics, and you understand the context in which the statement was spoken. Right? And we also understand the present context, because a lot of statements were spoken in general, for people in general, and not always applicable to devotees, and not always meant for devotees. Like we were discussing that statement Prabhupada had made. He said all the women should get married. He said everybody should get married. But then he said all the women should get married. And then he said men shouldn't get married. So why all this changing up? Because the idea is generally everyone should be married, because people aren't qualified to be renounced. But then he's talking about devotees. But devotee men, if they can remain single, that's good. And a lot of them can. And then later Prabhupada said even the women don't want to get married, they can remain single. And then another time a man would leave his wife, and Prabhupada would say, well, just make Krishna your husband. Or sometimes he'd say, why do you want to get married? Make Krishna your husband. So then he's applying it to a particular situation and applying it specifically to devotees. So for devotees it's a little different than it is for people in general. Prabhupada wouldn't say to women in general, make Krishna your husband, because they're not devotees. He would say, no, you should get married, you should be protected by a strong man, and so forth. So context is extremely important. When the statement was made, what the context it was made in, and what is the present context. And is Prabhupada, when he's saying something, is he addressing devotees or is he addressing population in general? Is this for the mass of people, or is it for us, or is it for both? So we want to understand these things. So Vishaka is making the point that when you look at things strictly from who's qualified to be a devotee, then distinction aren't made on the basis of body. It's made on the basis of sincerity. And so that way men and women are equally qualified. It's just based on how sincere you are. Now, I think it's also important to look at things practically. Do we see practically all the men in ISKCON are more advanced than the women? No, we don't see that. So by seeing there's so many advanced women and understanding that sincerity is the qualification, then it makes sense. We have Shastric evidence. Sincerity is your qualification. We have practical evidence. We see many women advanced. And so then we have to adjust our understanding within this context, within the devotional context. So many things changed. The Dhammi Buddha Yogam Tam, Krishna gives intelligence. So women will have many realizations and deep understandings of Krishna consciousness, because Krishna is giving them intelligence. So even though in general women are less intelligent when they're devotees, Krishna gives them so much intelligence. And then you also see there's so many intelligent women in the secular world. So you can't deny that, but you have to redefine what is Shastra meaning by intelligence. And so that same very, very intelligent woman may have emotional issues that she's dealing with that men don't have, and she may break down in a way that men wouldn't. So then we understand, okay, there's a difference here, and then Shastra is pointing out that emotional difference, or certain material needs that she has. So it's defining intelligence that way. But to think that women aren't capable because they don't have the same intelligence of men, that would be denying what's actually going on in the world. You know, so many females are doctors. You know, you have to be fairly smart to be a doctor. Or so many females are lawyers. You have to be fairly smart. At least have a good memory. But fairly smart, right? So you see these things. So how can you say they're not intelligent? You even see women in battle who can fight. Maybe they can't fight as valiantly as men, different body, different mind, but they can fight more valiantly than a lot of men. So you can't deny these things. As I said, there's a difference between denying this and then considering whether socially this is appropriate. Is it appropriate for women to fight in battle next to men? Probably not. At least in the Hare Krishna army, I don't think there would be women and men so close together. So, but you might say, but they can fight, and say, okay, let them fight on their own. But it'll create a problem. So there's some social strictures we have to follow, even if you want to author, even if women are going to become kshatriyas and fight, if we think, well, that's okay. But obviously there's social considerations. Okay. So let's go on. We're on page 12. If you're following this article, What's a Woman to Do? You can Google that. What's a Woman to Do? And this is page 12. Srila Prabhupada was not a warm, fuzzy guru who offered alluring cliches about the light, the force, or energy. Neither is Krishna such a god. Rather, Krishna and his devotees use strong words to classify materialists. Quote, men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna, the deliverer from evils. That's from Bhagavatam 2.3.19. Classifying groups of people serves as a way we and others can, 1, understand our conditioned predicament, 2, start to transcend our conditioning through purification, and 3, get an indication of where we are on Krishna's all-encompassing material map and how we can move forward to achieve our desired destination. So, when classifications are made, then you can consider what classification you fall into. That's one reason classifications are there. Where you stand on the classification map. It's just, but I think one of the problems that is so common, when classifications are made, then we think, well, Shastra is classifying non-devotees. But not entirely, because we're becoming devotees, so that means we're partially non-devotees as well. So if you look at the classifications or descriptions of certain classifications of non-devotees, you can see you have some of those qualities. Until you're completely pure, you will have some of those qualities. So I think it's wrong to think, oh, that's them. I'm not them. Those are the non-devotees. Yeah, but non-devotional tendencies exist within us. So the classifications are there also for us to understand more about ourselves. So, everyone in the material world is somewhere on Krishna's map, and every place on that map has, for the conditioned soul, assets and deficits. For example, scriptures tell us that before we can transcend the modes, we must first come to the mode of goodness. To be in the mode of goodness is advantageous, essential in fact, but those in that mode may be stuck in their materially comfortable, peaceful state and thus uninterested in spiritual life and unable to free themselves from repeated birth and death, a grim downside to the mode of goodness. What was the point there? We're somewhere in the modes, but we have to transcend them. According to Sri Krishna and Prabhupada's teachings, everyone regardless of his or her material designation, has the potential to attain the highest spiritual position, namely to become a pure devotee. If that were not true, Prabhupada wouldn't have come to America. And if that were not true, he wouldn't have given initiation to women. So, as you know, Prabhupada did not discriminate against anyone, any class or gender. Because the holy name can purify anyone. Now, if you look at things in a particular way, you could say, well, this class of people can do this and this class of people cannot do this, which was traditionally in Vedic culture. Only the Brahmins could do the pujas and shamskars and chant the mantras. And it's still true today, only initiated Brahmins can do the puja and the samskars, but everybody can chant the Hare Krishna mantra and other mantras, which previously you're only allowed to chant if you had a guru, and you're only allowed to hear shastra if you had a guru. So obviously things have changed. And so just by seeing what Prabhupada did, we can conclude that Krishna consciousness is equally available to everyone, and everyone can advance according to the mercy they get. It's not that if you get mercy, it's not going to work as much on you as it will work on me. It'll work on everybody. Pure Vaishnavas are beyond all designations and classifications. And in their purest state, they see everyone else as being beyond all designations and classifications as well. The association of such persons is uplifting, as Prabhupada said about his female disciples. Quote, those women are not ordinary women. They are preachers. They are Vaishnavas. By their association, one becomes a Vaishnava. So, I told this story before. One sannyasi who later got married. You could imagine after you hear the story that he would get married. He was on a morning walk and he kept saying, Prabhupada, aren't women the entanglement of the material world? The main entanglement. Isn't that why we're here? Prabhupada wouldn't say anything. And he kept asking, Prabhupada, isn't women the cause of all material attachment? And Prabhupada wouldn't say anything. Prabhupada, but isn't it true? The cause of all material attachment is women, attachment to women. So Prabhupada finally said yes. But he didn't say anything else, just said yes. This is what our Shastra says. So they came back from the morning walk, and then they went to the temple, and then Prabhupada's female disciples, they greeted him. And Prabhupada said something to the effect that the woman is the cause of entanglement, but if you associate with these women, then you'll go back home, back to Godhead. That was the idea. Nice, huh? Because that was not the mentality of the sannyasi at all. His mentality was all women are entanglements, even devotee women. I often ask devotees, and I think I've asked you before also, if you were in this situation, and let's say we went on Harinam, and we were arrested, and the police brought us to jail and said, well, you're going to be here for a few weeks to pay for this illegal activity of chanting in public. And so there's both men and women. And you have your choice. You can be put in a cell with a non-devotee, or you can be put in a cell with a devotee. Of course, you would choose a devotee, but in this case, the question is, if that devotee were the opposite sex, would you choose to be in a cell with the same sex non-devotee or with the opposite sex devotee? You just think about that. We can talk about it later. That's a moral dilemma question, right? Interesting question, right? Who would you rather be with? So let's say you're a man. Here's your choice. You could be in jail with this drug addict, robber, thief, murderer in the same cell with you and live with him for a month. Or you could live with the female devotee. And then the female devotee is your age. And then you'll ask me, well, is she good looking or not? All right, let's assume she's attractive. Or girls, let's assume he's your same age and he's attractive. So, if you want to answer the question, you can. I'm not going to answer it. I just asked it, and I'm going to keep talking. So, if you give an answer here on the chat, you have to explain why you made that decision. But I know what I would do, because I've been in jail before, about 5 times. Not before I was a devotee, after I was a devotee for Sankirtan and other things. And associating with non-devotees is not good. Especially, there's a lot of unsavory guys in jail. So, anyway, let's read on. This is from a letter from Srila Prabhupada. Krishna Karshan, he says, probably they'll end up married, but at least they'll still be devotees. You could say, she'll probably end up pregnant. Yeah, that may be also. That's why they get married. That's why they'll have to get married. It's hard to say what'll happen. That's the question. Will you come out better a month later living with non-devotees or living with a devotee? And you might say, well, if he's a sannyasi, brahmachari, he should never be alone with a woman. Yeah, okay. You should also never be alone with a non-devotee. So then what's worse? Interesting question, huh? It's a good question for a class discussion. So this is a letter from Prabhupada. Our mission is to see sarva sukhino bhavantu, everyone become happy. We don't want to see that we exploit someone else and I become happy. No, we want to see everyone happy. But they do not know how to become happy. Therefore, we are trying to spread this Krishna consciousness movement so that everyone will be happy. So she says, Krishna consciousness means facilitating all devotees so that they remain enthusiastic and determined to grow in their full potential. Prabhupada offered such facility, and we, his followers, are meant to offer the same facility to others. So, in other words, her point was, Prabhupada didn't discriminate. He gave it to everybody. Krishna consciousness, it wasn't. As we discussed, I think, last week, when Prabhupada went to Africa and the devotees were preaching to the Indians, and he said, no, I've come to preach to the Africans. Same thing happened in London. When Indians were coming, Indians were coming in the beginning of the movement in London, and Prabhupada said, I want to preach to the Westerners, don't preach to the Indians. He actually said that. Can you believe that? That's amazing. Of course, we're talking about not discriminating, but I think Prabhupada's point was Indians will come anyway. But you want to go for the local people. That's why we're in London, for the local people. So that's why we're in Africa, for the African people. When we go to India, we're there for the Indian people. So we never ever saw at any time Prabhupada tell anybody, don't let the women join, because if they join, then the brahmacharis will get married. If they join, the men will fall down. If they join, it will be bad for the men. We never heard that. We never heard Prabhupada say that. But we heard sannyasis say that. Hare Krishna. It's true. The truth must be spoken. So, we should know a lot of things were said by some overzealous brahmacharis or sannyasis that were never said by Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada didn't see the spreading of Krishna consciousness to be limited to anybody. So let me read a little more, then I'll take your questions. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, this is from a purport. wanted to reestablish Daivi Varnashram. In Daivi Varnashram, there cannot be acknowledgement of social status according to birthright. Because in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that the determining considerations are guna and karma, qualities and work. It is this Daiva Varnashram that should be established all over the world to continue a perfect society for Krishna consciousness. This may be astonishing to foolish critics, but it is one of the functions of a Krishna conscious society. So, Daivi Varnashram is much different than the caste system. And so it flies in the face of the caste system, because the caste system discriminates on the basis of your birth. And your birth determines your class. And class determines your social standard. It has nothing to do with your personal qualification. You are classified not by qualification, but by the family you're born into. And so, if we discriminate in ISKCON, we have to be careful. There has to be a reason to discriminate, because otherwise, then we're becoming like caste Brahmins, discriminating on the basis of birth, rather than on the basis of guna, quality, and karma, action, activity. So what we saw with Prabhupada is that he gave service on the basis of a person's eagerness and a person's qualification, not on the basis of their birth. It's interesting because Prabhupada never did his disciples' astrology, because you could say, well, he could have done their astrology, and then after doing their astrology, he could have determined who should get initiated and who shouldn't. Well, I can see based on your astrology that you have very demoniac stars in your chart, and therefore I cannot initiate you. He didn't do that. Because Krishna consciousness is transcendental, the holy name is transcendental. And therefore he didn't evaluate people materially. He evaluated them, as I said, based on their sincerity. And he knew if they were sincere, everything would come from that. They would get Krishna's mercy. And so, really, if you're going to say Prabhupada judged people, this is how we judged them, based on their sincerity. Not based on any material consideration. Okay, so we have 2 comments or questions. Let's go find them. To have successful marriage, compatibility is required. I was wondering if in devotees' marriage, spiritual compatibility is required. I mean, should spouses, devotees, be at the same level of advancement? It's better if they are. It seems that if one spouse is less advanced, it might be an obstacle for another spouse, because they are not aligned. Yeah, maybe. It's easier if they're... Yeah. Because advancement also means you're situated in different modes of nature. So if you're in passion, your husband's in goodness, then, what Prabhupada said, he said, well, that's good for the wife, because the husband will bring her up to goodness. But if she wants to remain in passion and bring him into passion, that's going to create a problem. If she's naturally in goodness and he's in goodness, the compatibility is natural. If he's in passion and she's in passion, they're compatible in the mode of passion. If she's in ignorance and he's in ignorance, they're compatible. They'll just fight all day, and they like to fight. If they're in passion, they'll just make lots of money and have big, beautiful home, and be very sexual and have beautiful things, but they both like it, so it works. And if they're both Brahminical, then it'll be quite simple, and they'll be more interested in preaching and studying and not accumulating so much and spending time in the Dham and so forth. So let's say you want to go to the Dham because you're in the mode of ignorance and your husband's in passion, he just wants to stay in the city and make money. then there's a conflict, obviously. Then you have to... So it's not that you can't resolve it, but it just means there's more to resolve. If you were both in Sattva Gun, there'd be nothing really to resolve. At least there'd be less to resolve. But I think you could make this argument for same sex, for friends of the same sex. You know, if you're very Brahminical and you have a friend who's very tamasic, it's not going to work. Even if they're too rajasic, it's not going to work, because you'll want to hear and chant and they'll want to gossip. Right? And you'll say, you know, I don't want to gossip. And they'll want to criticize devotees, and you'll say, I don't want to do that. So, you know, there's obviously incompatibilities between the different modes of nature. If someone is too one mode and someone is too much another mode, they're definitely going to create compatibility. I was saying the other class something I think is so funny, but it's true, and that's why it's so funny, that the honeymoon for Brahmins is to read Bhagavatam. That's their honeymoon. Romance for Brahmins is to do puja together. That's the, you know, let's worship the deity. That's their romantic time, is worshiping the deity together, doing kirtan together, taking prasadam together, studying shastra together. That's Brahminical romance. Isn't that funny? And Rajasic romance is, you know, spending lots of money, going on vacations, being very sensual, and so forth. And I'm not sure what tamasic romance looks like, but it's not pretty. So, and this devotee was saying, she was talking about devotees. She wasn't talking about non-devotees. She said, this is what devotees in the mode of passion will do on their honeymoon. They'll go to some exotic place they'll enjoy. They won't go to Vrindavan on their honeymoon. They'll go to some island somewhere and enjoy, because it's their mode. So yeah, you can see how it would create incompatibility if one partner is very Brahminical and one partner is really passionate. Now, sometimes we see the woman is very, very Brahminical and the husband's very passionate. But she's alone all day at the home, taking care of the house and the kids, and he's gone. So they don't have so much interaction, and when he comes home he's like tired, and so he gets rid of all of his passion at work. So that doesn't create so much of a problem. When he comes home he's kind of more sattvic. But you can see if a person is too passionate and someone is too sattvic, it could be a problem. They live in different worlds. So when you talk about compatibility, personality-wise you may be compatible, but guna-wise you may not be. And a lot of astrologers don't do the guna compatibility, or they don't do the background check, you know, what's your family heritage and the modes and all that. And so sometimes they overlook incompatibilities. So does it mean if there's incompatibilities you can't get around it? No, but you have to know how to get around it. You have to know these things. And a lot of people don't know, so they get thrown off by the incompatibility. And so, but the point Prabhupada made, he said, great, if you're in the mode of passion, your husband's in the mode of goodness, that's good for you. Or vice versa. Your wife's in goodness, you're in passion, that's good for you, because then, by their association, you go up. And it would be kind of foolish to pull them down to your mode. Right? That was Prabhupada's point. So Prabhupada said the husband should be in goodness. And then he'll bring the wife up. He'll be stable, he'll be sense-controlled, he'll be regulated. If she's in passion, she may be more irregulated. And then he brings her up. And so you will see, perhaps Krishna Karshana, you could validate this. But generally, in a marriage, if the wife is sattvic and the husband is rajasic, it doesn't work, because women want men who are strong. And women want men who are sense-controlled. They don't want overly sensual men who just work all day and don't chant and read Shastra. Especially, if the woman is a good devotee, she's very sattvic, it can be a real problem. And Prabhupada says that in the purport. In one purport, he says an amazing thing. He said, if the woman has better qualities than the man, the marriage will not work. So you find this woman, she was very devotional, very sattvic, she has many good qualities, and the man doesn't. He said the marriage is going to be hard. He has to be, in the ideal marriage, he has to be better than her, and she likes that, and he uplifts her, and women want strong men. So sometimes a woman will have a very strong husband, and she's thinking in the back of her mind, well, I wish he wasn't so Krishna conscious. He's like too Krishna conscious for me. But the fact is, if you married that woman to a man who was less Krishna conscious, she would just be frustrated with him. She wouldn't like him. She would, you weakling, you stupid, you lazy bum. So it doesn't work when the woman is better. Generally, it can work, but generally it doesn't. And women are generally not happy with men who are weaker, unless you have a woman who just wants to totally control her man and find the weakest guy she can. But I think that's a very abnormal situation. And the normal situation is a woman wants a strong man who is sattvic, who she can depend on, who she knows will always be Krishna conscious. He'll always be following. So that's my analysis. So here's Radhapriya's answer to the prison question. I could see the situation like probably Krishna sent me to preach to the non-devotees. Yeah, many devotees say that. And after the association, this person could be a devotee. Yeah, many devotees say that, yeah. Now, what are the chances that's going to happen? And what are the chances they may preach to you and you become a non-devotee in the process of you preaching to them to become devotee, you may become a non-devotee. So yeah, that's the answer. The basic two answers is I'd rather be with the devotee, and the other answer is I'd make the non-devotees devotees. And to which I would say, really? You sure? Hardly one person becomes a devotee out of many thousands, and there are not going to be even a few hundred in jail. So what are the chances? You're going to make them a devotee, and what are the chances they're going to make you a non-devotee? I think there's as good, if not a better chance, they'll make you a non-devotee. It's something to think about. Anyway, it's an interesting question. But I think in the long run, no matter what happens, you say, well, we'll fall down, we'll fall in love, this and that, yeah. But no matter what happens, it won't throw you off Krishna consciousness. But the association of non-devotees could destroy you. Sinful activity won't destroy you, because you can get purified from sin. Association of a non-devotee can destroy you. But that's something to consider, right? And we have many, many grihastas who are married for many, many years and they're very Krishna conscious, but when they started out in grihasta life, they were kind of like the man and woman in prison, together all day. They weren't perfectly Krishna conscious, but it didn't destroy them. Whereas if you see that someone associates with a non-devotee, that destroys them. So Rafa says, I'd go to the devotee prison cell because vegetarian food and the possibility of asking female devotees about their thinking and behavior. Yeah, you could hear and chant. I think everyone's going to have a different answer. I don't know if there's a right answer. But definitely you could hear and chant. My mother-in-law many years ago became a Jehovah's Witness. This religion became second religion of Poland right now. The foundation of this religion is family. For me, it seems that right now, if a religious organization wants to achieve success, it must focus on families. Yeah, well, yes. I think the challenge we had, and we still have in some places, is that we imported a culture which is based on renunciation, and we didn't have examples of non-renunciation. We just had examples of renunciation, tons of brahmacharis and sannyasis, and we looked down upon grihastha life, and therefore we didn't have a strong foundation for the future. And that's what Mother Urmila said. She said that the way religions become huge is through family, through offspring. You know, also people join ISKCON and they leave, right? So generally, those who are born as devotees, if they make it to their early adulthood as a devotee, they're not going to leave. Nadine Liu asks, how can I help a woman who is in an obviously unhealthy relationship? That is, it's more of a on-off relationship. Both are devotees. He is more passionate guy. I'm not sure about her. She is... She's definitely naive and often clumsy, and I have the impression that he exploits this. He wants to enjoy her, but does not take responsibility. Oh, it sounds like a bona fide Kali Yuga husband. As an example, he lived with her for a while, but only paid a small part of the rent because she still has 2 children. In his view, it would be unfair because they are 3, and so he only wants to pay a third, or a fourth. Should I even try to help? He more or less has involved me in this matter by complaining about her. Should you help? Yes, if you know how to. And if he's willing to take the help and she's willing to take the help. Or find someone who can help them and ask them if they want to be helped. Just a general observation, in most of the bad marriages I've seen, both the husband and wife are doing things wrong. And there's a lot of ignorance about what should be done. There's a lot of ignorance about what should be expected of the other person and expected of oneself. And that makes sense, because if that ignorance were not there, they would be getting along much better. If they actually knew what to do and knew how to establish a good relationship, they'd be getting along better. So there are things that couples can do to resolve problems and make the marriage better. But not all couples are open to even learning, and those who are open to learning, not all of them will agree. They'll fight it. And a lot of times, people will fight it in the name of Shastra. No, that's not in our Shastra. Our Shastra says A, B, and C. And so they stick to Shastra and they end up divorced. Like, that doesn't make sense. If you're following Shastra, how did you end up divorced? But so there's some ignorance there. No, I don't want to do this. And the counselor would say, no, it's better if you do this. No, but Shastra says this. So they stick with their Shastric understanding and they end up divorced. So certainly that's not what Prabhupada wants. So there's a lot of ignorance surrounding Grihastha life, and then that ignorance is often amplified by misapplication of Shastra or misunderstanding of Shastra. So like, if you're applying Shastra to a situation and it's disrupting your life, generally it'll probably mean you're not applying it properly. I mean, if it's disrupting your life in a way that disrupts your Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, yes, if you become Krishna conscious, your material life does get disrupted. That's sometimes unavoidable. People just don't like you anymore because you're a devotee. But I'm talking about things which are more within your control. And if you acted another way, you would be it would be better, you would be more Krishna conscious. So this is unfortunate, and I've seen it many, many times. Divorce in the name of Shastra, problems in the name of Shastra, discord in the name of Shastra, arguments in the name of Shastra, division in the name of Shastra. That doesn't make sense when you think about it. If we're actually following the Shastra, the result of following the Shastra is that we hate one another. The result of following Shastra is that we're divided. No, that can't be. So that's the problem with a lot of marriages. The use of Shastra becomes the source of the problem. And in one way it becomes a problem is, well, let's say I use Shastra and I say, well, according to Shastra, you're wrong. Or according to Shastra, you're doing the wrong thing. Or according to Shastra, you said the wrong thing. Or according to Shastra, whatever, right? And the result of your statements is that you create this really dysfunctional relationship. So, is that what we're supposed to be doing? No, it's not what Prabhupada wants from us. So that means we've either misunderstood Shastra, or we misapplied it, or we don't understand the goal of the ashram. The goal of the ashram is not to put another person down. So, if I say to my wife, if I criticize her because she's not following the Shastra, criticism is destructive to a relationship, right? Isn't it? Just like you could meet anyone on the street and criticize them based on Shastra. You're a mudha. You live like an animal. You have no intelligence. You're just working all day. You're just an ass. You could say that, but why would you say that? It wouldn't make sense, because the people would never want to talk to you. They'd never want anything to do with Krishna consciousness. So it's similar that sometimes we'll see our spouse, they're doing something wrong, and then we bring in the Shastra to stab them. But criticism is an excellent way to destroy a marriage. In fact, if there's too much criticism in a marriage, it will self-destruct. So now you're bringing in criticism based on Shastra, and that Shastra is destroying your marriage. You understand? So there's this kind of dysfunction that exists within misapplication, misunderstanding of Shastra. And we see it all the time. So if either the husband or wife don't have the capacity to understand that having a good marriage is extremely important, and if they tend to use their illogical thinking and kind of skewed understanding of Shastra to validate their not being a good husband or wife, you're going to have a tough time. But if they're open to want to improve themselves and open to understanding how to do that, yeah, you help them or get a professional to help them. Question. Seymour. Okay, I have a question. Here's the question. It's from Cho Chandravali Devidasi. We moved to an inner city area so we can do outreach service, and we live 350 miles from the outreach center. Miles or meters? Can't get any better than that. It must be meters. Yeah. Soon the 5G mobile network will be rolling out in our area, and 5G can cause a lot of health concerns. My question is, will Krishna protect us because we're in the area for preaching, or do we move away because trust in God, but tie your camel? Yeah, that's a Arab saying, right? Like they used to ride camels, I guess, ride camels to work or to the store. And so I just leave my camel and hope that I hope that God protects him and he doesn't run away or someone doesn't steal him. No, tie your camel, because, yeah. Well, You know, the world works according to physical laws. So that's why you tie your camel, because camel may run away or someone may steal it or whatever. This is an excellent question. Now, there's two ways of looking at it. Okay, 5G is going to come, everyone's going to get cancer, and everyone's going to die, so there won't be anyone to preach to anyway, so what does it matter if I'm still alive? I'll just die with everybody. It's like there's a war. Well, I'll just go out in the war and preach, and we're all going to get shot, but at least I'll preach, and I'll die, they'll die. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is maybe with 5G coming, this is the time that we develop our ashrams and invite people out, or maybe we have to buy land where there's not going to be 5G, or maybe we can blow up all the cell towers every time they put them up, so we can live free from 5G. I wonder if there's going to be parts of the country which will be 5G free, just because there'll be so much protest. This is like a difficult issue. For those of you who don't know, 5G is like 100 times or 1,000 times more detrimental than 4G, and 4G is already causes cancer. So this will, and if your kids are using 5G and their little soft brains, oh my God, this is going to be a mess. Aside from what the technology can do, that's going to also create a mess. Robots are going to be the latest craze, and it's going to be a mess. I can't answer this question right now. I think it's a personal choice. There's a good chance if you're living in this 5G atmosphere, your health is going to go down. And you could get away from it, should you stay in that area and preach? Yeah, I think we have to preach, but we have to be healthy. So maybe someone is going to come up with some kind of iodine or this or that and say, take this, it will prevent you from help you with the radiation. That's what I'm hoping, because that's what they say, If you take a lot of iodine and kelp and such. It's a personal choice you're going to have to make, but we can't say it's going to give everyone cancer, but it's going to be bad for our health. Even now, I keep my phone off most of the time. I don't need it on. I don't carry it around with me. I don't put it in my pocket. I just, I have things on it to prevent frequencies. It's just, you kind of have to defend yourself in this culture. How to deal with ladies and gentlemen who are living Tama party lifestyle and say, thinking about me as homosexual, I never sleep or did that with another male. What Krishna suggests in such a case? Find new friends. A lot of times when people say something stupid, it's because they're in ignorance. And so sometimes rather than get upset, we just have to write it off as ignorance. Just like when I became a devotee, people thought if you become vegetarian, you're going to die, and they thought it was crazy. So, of course, we knew that they didn't understand. They didn't have knowledge, so it didn't really bother us. We would just kind of laugh at it. Well, they don't know. And half the people who told us we're going to die if we don't eat meat are probably vegetarians now. So, a lot of times the people who are most antagonistic to what you're doing are the ones who become most attracted. Interesting, isn't it? So for me personally, when people say foolish things, I think, okay, thank you for sharing, and we'll see you later. And later may never happen, because why do I want to hang around with you? So that's the idea. Don't take it too seriously or personally. Just understand their ignorance. And so what they just said is perfect for someone who doesn't have the knowledge you have. It makes total sense. It's like, what do you do when a Christian comes up to you? And this Christian is not vegetarian. That he's having pretty much unrestricted sex with his wife. And he does a few other things that are very tamasic. And he tells you you're going to hell. how do you respond to that? You just go, okay. Wherever Krishna wants, that's where I'll go. You don't deal with it. So you understand, he's in ignorance. Why should I talk to him? So it's like these people, associates or friends, are in ignorance. So, that's just what they're going to say. Do you want to hang out with them or do you not want to hang out with them? That's a decision you have to make. Krishna Karshani says, from the psychological point of view, if a person is attracting an abusive partner, it means that this person has victim mentality. To attract the right person, a partner will need to be psychologically healthy. It sounds a bit heavy, but our partner is, in more cases, reflection of our internal issues, yes. But sometimes you attract a nice person, but they just don't have relationship skills, and they need to learn them. So that's there also. But one thing I can tell you about Grihastha life, I think, which is kind of the essence of my understanding, is that you can always make things better, which I think is common sense. You can always make it better no matter how bad it is. It's just if the compatibility is lower, it requires more effort to make it better. It's not as natural as it would be with higher compatibility. It's more natural. You just naturally get along. It doesn't take as much work if there's a misunderstanding. If your compatibility is low, the misunderstandings will be more common, they may be greater, and it requires more work. But in any marriage where you can eliminate criticism and contemptuous behavior, control, I'm right, you're wrong type of thing, and bring in more appreciation, more communication, it's going to be better. And even a compatible couple, if they start becoming critical and they don't have good communication, and one tries to dominate the other, it doesn't matter they're compatible, it's going to be a bad relationship. So I think that's, the problem with karma, and maybe the problem with some devotees, is we give too much validity to destiny. And I don't think that's intelligent, because you can always make things better, no matter how bad they are. But better, like I said, don't get involved. You open a business. Okay, the business isn't that good. It would have been better you started another business that would have been better, but it doesn't mean you can't make this business work. It's going to require a lot of work to make it work, because it's not as good a business as some other businesses. So it's something like that. You can get a radiation shield, yes. Yes. Like this. See that little green thing? It's called BioZen. Have one on my computer, one on my phone, have one on my router. Routers are really bad for radiation. I actually bought a box. It's a metal box. It has wires like this. And apparently with wires like this, the electromagnetic frequencies can't go out. So I put it in the box, and like our internet reception went down because the frequencies are not going around the house. That's interesting, right? Or live in a metal house. Okay, so right now we're in Montreal. We're in Quebec, 2 hours north of Montreal. And we'll have class tomorrow. But there's a class going on, so I should probably go to the class. And we'll have class tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I'm giving class on Sunday in Montreal. So I can broadcast that, but I have to find out what time it is, and I'll let you know. And then, yeah, I think the last thing I said was actually more important than I even realized. That in any situation, you can make things better. Just like look at our situation. Shrutikirti's here, and he said something amazing. It just went very deep. into my heart and mind. I've been thinking about it. Prabhupada told him, he said, because of all the drugs and sex you've had, he said, you cannot do anything. If it wasn't for the Maha Mantra, you could not do anything, which means you could not advance, you could not preach, you could not be successful in any way, because pretty much you destroyed yourself. You're just like, you're not like subhuman, nothing. You know, like we're subhuman, we're outcasts. We're just like, you know, nothing. We have no qualification. So if it wasn't for the Maha Mantra, right, we would be useless. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't advance very much. We couldn't do much service. We couldn't be a good example. So that's an example of taking a pretty much helpless situation, a pathetically helpless situation, bring in a pure devotee, bring in Shastra, bring in the holy name, bring in the holy Dham, bring in the deities, and all of a sudden you've created a possibility here that people can become Krishna conscious from a situation where there was no possibility. So it's the same with everything. And this is very important, because otherwise you look at the situation and think, oh, it's not possible. Well, there's always a way to do it. So you may have a high degree of incompatibility, but there are ways, if you're willing and open, there are ways to resolve issues. One of the ways you resolve an issue, this is something we learned that's so important, one of the ways you resolve an issue is by not resolving it, by understanding it that you can't resolve it, so don't try. And that's how it's resolved. Like, let's say I want to preach in a particular way, you know, we're in the same temple, you want to preach in another way, and we're always going up against one another. And you're saying, no, we've always preached this is the way Prabhupada preached, we should stick to it. And I'm saying, but you haven't made any devotees in the last few years or the last 10 years, hardly anyone's coming. We need to adapt to the mentality of people. And so we're always at loggerheads, right? But it doesn't mean we can't come to some kind of solution. It just means it's more difficult. It doesn't mean I can't do it my way, you can't do it your way. It doesn't mean there's not a way to resolve it if we're willing to resolve it and we're willing to work on it. So, you have to know how. For sure, you have to know how. But if you want to preach this way and I want to preach this way, and we just accept, we're never going to agree. It's just, I have this attitude, you have that attitude. So let us both just be okay. You know, I'm not going to get on your case. You're not going to get on my case. We're both going to preach in our own way, and we'll respect one another. That's how you resolve it. You can't resolve it any other way. So sometimes in a relationship, you disagree, and you allow that disagreement to become a cause of a huge problem. But it doesn't have to be. It only is if you make it a problem. So sometimes you just have to say, here's a problem, we disagree, we'll never agree. I'm like, yeah, it's true, we'll never agree. And I like you and you like me. And we're not going to let this disagreement get in the way of the relationship. It's just, we acknowledge we have these differences. That's, you know, you want this and I want that. And you'll always want this and I'll always want that. And it's never going to change. So once we just say, okay, it's true. I'm not going to try to change you. You're not going to try to change me. We're going to accept this is an irreconcilable difference. So, okay, fine. You just solved the problem by not solving it. Isn't that interesting? So the point is, in any handicapped or disadvantaged situation, you can make it work, but you have to want to, and as I think Krishna Krsna said, you have to know how to. So then find out how to do it. If you don't know how, learn. That's the point. And if you learn, you can do it. You'll be amazed. So many marriages have been turned around by people who are ready to get divorced because they didn't know how to have a good relationship. They had to learn. They were just fighting, criticizing, condemning, controlling. That is a definite way to destroy a marriage. So they learned other skills. They learned the importance of appreciation. They learned the importance of communication. They learned the importance of listening to one another. They learned the importance of respecting one another, even if you don't agree. And all of a sudden it turned the marriage around. And when you learn these things, you see, yeah, well, this is just common sense. Not in marriage, but in any relationship. But when we get in this mood, no, I have to be right. I have to control everything. And I have to show you how stupid you are and put you in your place because you didn't put the toilet seat down or the cap back on the toothpaste. All these like stupid things that you need to control. That doesn't work. You don't want to be controlled. You don't want to be criticized. So why do you think your partner's going to like it when you do it? It's just common sense. So you can learn how to take a bad situation and make it good. That's my realization with everything. If you accept that and understand that, then in any situation you're in life, you'll always think, how can I make this better? I'm not so good at this, or I don't understand this. I need to learn how to get better at this, and I need to understand this because I need to make it better. I don't naturally understand it. I'm not naturally good, but I need to learn. Some people naturally are good. They don't have the problem. Like that. That's how we have to think. Okay, so I'm going to go. Hare Krishna. We'll see you tomorrow, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, same time as today's class. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.